The evening rush at Bellini's had finally ended. Elena Novak wiped down her last table, her fingers working quickly as they always did after 8 hours on her feet. The restaurant's dim lighting hid the exhaustion on her face, but nothing could mask the heaviness in her shoulders. 6 days a week, she served the wealthy and privileged of Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, becoming practically invisible to them despite being the one who ensured their glasses never emptied and their needs were met before they even realized they had them. Table 7 left you something decent for once, her coworker Danny said, sliding past with a tray of dirty dishes. Elena checked the leather folder and found 3 $20 bills. Not bad for a Tuesday. The money would help with next month's rent, which was perpetually hanging over her head like a storm cloud. Thanks for covering the Henderson party tomorrow, Danny added. I owe you one. Elena nodded, though she hadn't forgotten. The Henderson party meant good tips, but also meant dealing with entitled guests who would snap their fingers for service as if she were a trained dog. Still, money was money, and Elena needed every dollar she could get. As she hung up her apron in the back room, Mr. Bellini, the owner, poked his head through the doorway. He was a short, round man with thinning hair who had inherited the restaurant from his father and reminded his staff of this fact at least once per shift. Elena, a moment, he called, gesturing for her to follow him to his office. She suppressed a sigh. These after-shift conversations usually meant extra work for the same pay. Tomorrow's Henderson party, he began, settling behind his cluttered desk. There's been a change. They've requested entertainment. Elena nodded, waiting for him to explain how this affected her. Their pianist canceled last minute. Some family emergency. Mr. Bellini's fingers drummed nervously on his desk. I remembered something. Didn't you mention once that you studied music before? A cold feeling spread through Elena's chest. That was a long time ago, Mr. Bellini. But you did, yes, piano? His eyes had that calculating look she recognized, the one that appeared whenever he found a way to cut costs. I haven't played in 7 years, she said firmly. But you could play for the party? Some background music, nothing fancy. He wasn't really asking, I don't think. Mr. Henderson is one of our most important clients. His party will have influential people, people who could help the restaurant, people who could help you even. He leaned forward. I need this, Elena. What he meant was, your job depends on it. Elena felt the familiar twist of anxiety in her stomach. 7 years since she'd touched a piano. 7 years since she'd packed away that part of her life, buried it deep where it couldn't hurt her anymore. Just some simple pieces, Mr. Bellini continued, mistaking her silence for consideration. Classical stuff that rich people like. You'll still make your serving money. I'll have Thomas cover your tables while you play, and I'll add a bonus. $200. $200. That could cover the electric bill and maybe some groceries. Elena closed her eyes briefly, seeing the past she'd tried to forget flashing behind her eyelids. The Juilliard practice rooms, the competitions, her mother's proud smile, then the hospital rooms, the funeral, the packing up of the family piano because the medical bills had taken everything else. Fine, she said finally, her voice hardly more than a whisper. But just background music just tomorrow night. Mr. Bellini's face broke into a wide smile. Excellent. I knew I could count on you. As Elena left the restaurant and stepped into the cool Chicago night, she felt as if she were walking toward an execution rather than her apartment. The thought of touching piano keys again made her hands shake. Music had been her entire identity once, the talented daughter, the scholarship student, the rising star. Then life had happened, as it often did, with cruel and unexpected force. Her tiny studio apartment was on the 3rd floor of an aging building in a neighborhood that was neither dangerous nor particularly safe. The elevator was perpetually out of order, so Elena climbed the stairs slowly, her legs protesting after the long shift. Once inside, she dropped her bag and sank onto her second-hand couch. The apartment was neat but sparse. A bed, the couch, a small kitchen table with 2 mismatched chairs, and a bookshelf containing the few possessions she'd kept from before. Hidden in a box under her bed were the remnants of her previous life. Competition medals, program booklets with her name printed inside, and a few photographs she couldn't bear to look at but couldn't throw away. Elena pulled out her phone and with trembling fingers searched for piano practice videos. If she was going to play tomorrow, she would need to prepare. The thought made her stomach knot. She fell asleep on the couch with her phone still in her hand, classical piano music playing softly from its speakers. Morning came too quickly. Elena woke with a stiff neck and the immediate weight of dread pressing down on her. She made coffee and stood by her window, watching the city come to life as she tried to mentally prepare for what was coming. She arrived at Bellini's 2 hours before her shift to practice on the restaurant's grand piano, which sat in the corner of the main dining room. It was a beautiful instrument, far better than anything she'd played on in years. Mr. Bellini had acquired it more for show than function, a status symbol to impress guests. The restaurant was empty except for the cleaning staff. Elena approached the piano cautiously as if it might bite her. She brushed her fingers across the fallboard, then slowly lifted it to reveal the keys. They gleamed in the morning light, perfect ivory and ebony teeth smiling up at her. She sat on the bench, adjusted its height, and positioned her hands above the keys without touching them. Her heart pounded so hard she felt lightheaded. 7 years. 7 years since she'd abandoned this part of herself. Elena lowered her hands and played a simple C major scale. The sound resonated through the empty restaurant, each note clear and precise. Her fingers remembered even if she wished they didn't. She moved through basic exercises, surprised at how quickly her muscle memory returned, though her technique was rusty. After an hour, she had compiled a mental list of pieces she could still play reasonably well, some Chopin nocturnes, a few Bach inventions, some Debussy. Nothing too challenging, nothing that would force her to truly engage with the music. Safe pieces, background music, as Mr. Bellini had said. By evening, the Henderson party was in full swing. 30 guests occupied the private dining room, which had been decorated with tasteful flower arrangements and candles. Elena had served drinks for the first hour, her anxiety building with each passing minute. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Bellini caught her eye and nodded toward the piano. It was time. Elena handed off her serving tray to Thomas and made her way to the instrument. She wore her standard waitress uniform, black pants and a white button-up shirt, hardly the concert attire she once would have chosen. She sat down, took a deep breath, and began with a Chopin nocturne, one of the simpler ones she had practiced that morning. The conversations continued around her, her playing merely providing atmosphere. This was fine, she told herself. Better than having people actually listen. She moved through her planned program methodically, keeping the volume controlled, her emotions firmly in check. Just fingers on keys, just notes on a page. Don't feel it, don't remember. Halfway through her second Debussy piece, Elena noticed a man watching her from a nearby table. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair and intense eyes behind stylish glasses. He held a wine glass but wasn't drinking, his attention fixed entirely on her hands. Elena looked away quickly, focusing on the sheet music she didn't really need. Something about his gaze unsettled her. It was evaluating, critical. She recognized that look from her conservatory days. A musician, perhaps, or worse, a critic. As she finished the piece, polite applause rippled through the room. Mr. Henderson approached the piano with a glass raised in her direction. "Our waitress is full of surprises," he announced to his guests. "Who would have thought we'd find such talent serving our appetizers?" A few people laughed, and Elena felt her cheeks burn. She nodded acknowledgement and prepared to start another safe, unremarkable piece. "Play something else," the silver-haired man called out suddenly. Something with more substance. The room quieted. Elena glanced at Mr. Bellini, who gave her an encouraging nod, clearly pleased that his makeshift entertainment was drawing attention. "I'm just providing background music." "Sir," Elena said politely. "Nonsense," the man replied. "Someone with your training shouldn't waste time on these pleasant trifles. Give us something real." How did he know about her training? Elena felt exposed, as if he could somehow see her past written across her face. "Perhaps Rachmaninoff?" he suggested, a challenge in his voice. "Or one of your own compositions?" Her heart skipped. Her compositions. No one had heard those in years, not since her final recital at Juilliard before everything fell apart. "I don't compose anymore," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Pity," the man said, sipping his wine at last. "It's a waste." Something shifted inside Elena then. A spark of the old defiance that had once driven her through grueling practice sessions and competitive auditions. Before she could reconsider, her fingers found the opening notes of her final composition from Juilliard, a piece she had called Winterlight. The melody emerged hesitantly at first, like a creature long caged suddenly finding itself free. Elena had written it during her mother's illness, pouring all her fear and hope into the music. As she played, the room around her disappeared. There was only the piano, her hands, and the story they were telling together. The piece built slowly, growing more complex, more emotionally raw. Elena's body swayed slightly as she played, her technique returning with each passing measure. The conversations in the room had stopped completely now. Every eye was on her, but she noticed nothing beyond the piano. When the final notes faded, Elena remained frozen, her hands hovering above the keys, afraid to break the spell. The silence stretched for several seconds before applause erupted, real applause, not the polite acknowledgement from before. She looked up, dazed, to find the silver-haired man standing near the piano, his expression unreadable. As the applause died down, he leaned closer. Victor Reynolds, he introduced himself. Chicago Symphony music critic. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Reynolds was notorious for his brutal reviews, for ending careers with his razor-sharp assessments. That piece, he said quietly. Your composition? She nodded, unable to speak. Interesting, he said, his tone making the words sound like anything but a compliment. Such obvious talent, yet here you are serving champagne. What a profound waste. He turned and walked away, leaving Elena sitting at the piano, her momentary triumph crumbling around her. The rest of the guests resumed their conversations, the magical moment already forgotten. She was just the waitress again, momentarily entertaining but ultimately insignificant. As she began another safe, unmemorable piece, Elena's eyes burned with unshed tears. She had remembered for just a moment who she used to. Elena's apartment felt smaller than usual that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, replaying Victor Reynolds' words in her mind. Such obvious talent, yet here you are serving champagne. What a profound waste. The critic had a reputation for being harsh, but something about his dismissal cut deeper than any negative review could have. She hadn't played her own composition in years, hadn't even thought about it until Reynolds had goaded her. Now the music wouldn't leave her head, along with memories of who she used to be, a young woman with dreams so big they seemed unbreakable. Until they broke, sleep didn't come easily. Elena tossed and turned, fragments of melodies chasing each other through her mind. When her alarm finally buzzed at 6 a.m., she had maybe 3 hours of restless sleep behind her. Another day, another shift at Bellini's. The morning dragged by. Elena moved between tables mechanically, pouring coffee and taking orders while her mind wandered elsewhere. Around noon, Mr. Bellini called her into his office. Last night was a triumph, he announced, beaming at her as if they shared a wonderful secret. Mr. Henderson called personally to thank me. The music was exquisite, he said. Several guests commented. Elena nodded politely. I'm glad it worked out. Worked out? It was brilliant. In fact, he leaned forward conspiratorially. I was thinking we could make it a regular thing. Friday and Saturday nights, perhaps? We could advertise. Live piano music by Elena Novak, former Juilliard prodigy. Her stomach dropped. No, Mr. Bellini, that was a one-time thing like we agreed. His smile faltered. I'll pay you, of course. $300 per night plus your regular wages. The amount gave her pause. $600 extra each weekend would make a real difference in her life. She could start saving, maybe even take some classes at the community college. I'll think about it, she said finally, knowing she wouldn't. Excellent. We'll start this Friday. Before she could protest further, a hostess poked her head into the office. Elena, there's someone asking for you out front. Grateful for the interruption, Elena excused herself. At the front of the restaurant stood a woman she vaguely recognized from the Henderson party, tall and elegant with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a simple but clearly expensive pantsuit and carried a leather portfolio. Elena Novak? The woman asked, extending her hand. I'm Sophia Lynn. I was at the party last night. Your playing was extraordinary. Elena shook her hand automatically. Thank you. I'm sorry, but I'm working right now. I understand. I won't take much of your time. Sophia opened her portfolio and removed a business card. I'm the director of the West Side Community Music Program. We provide music education to kids who wouldn't otherwise have access. Elena took the card reluctantly, West Side was one of the poorer neighborhoods in Chicago. I'd like to talk to you about possibly teaching piano for us, Sophia continued. Part-time, of course. We can't pay much, but after hearing you play, especially your own composition, well, our students would benefit enormously from your talent. I don't teach, Elena said quickly. I'm not even a pianist anymore, not really. Last night was just filling in. Sophia studied her face for a moment. That's not what I heard. That piece you played? Your piece, it wasn't just technically accomplished. It had soul. The kids I work with, they need teachers who understand what it means to put your heart into music, not just your fingers. Elena glanced at the clock behind the hostess stand. I need to get back to my tables. Of course. Sophia smiled warmly. My number's on the card. We're having an open house this Saturday afternoon. Come by, see what we do. No commitment. Elena tucked the card into her pocket. I'll think about it. Throughout her shift, Elena found herself thinking about Sophia's offer. Teaching piano had never been part of her plan. Before everything fell apart, she had been on track for a performance career. Teaching was what pianists did when they couldn't make it as soloists. At least that's what many of her professors had implied. But that life was behind her now. She wasn't a pianist anymore. She was a waitress who happened to know how to play. And yet something about the idea of helping kids learn music tugged at her. When she got home that night, she pulled out the box from under her bed, the one containing the remnants of her former life. Among the competition medals and programs was a small notebook filled with musical notations. Her composition journal from Juilliard. She hadn't opened it in years. Elena flipped through pages of half-formed melodies and chord progressions until she found Winter Light, the piece she'd played at the Henderson party. Seeing the notes on the page brought back the feeling of writing it, the late nights in practice rooms, the emotions she'd poured into every measure. She had been working on a new piece when her mother got sick, something she'd tentatively called After Rain. It was meant to be hopeful, a counterpoint to the melancholy of Winter Light. She never finished it. Looking at the incomplete notation now, Elena could hear how it should continue. The music was still inside her, waiting. She closed the notebook quickly and returned it to the box. Some doors were better left shut. Saturday came and Elena found herself standing outside a worn brick building with West Side Community Center painted above the entrance. Through the windows, she could see a group of children gathered around a woman demonstrating something on a violin. She nearly turned around and left. But just then the door opened and Sophia Lynn stepped out. Elena. You came. She sounded genuinely pleased. Come in, we're just starting a group lesson. Before Elena could protest, Sophia ushered her inside. The community center was clean but clearly operating on a tight budget. Mismatched chairs were arranged in a semicircle in what appeared to be a multi-purpose room. About a dozen children ranging from maybe 7 to 15 years old sat watching the violin teacher. This is Ms. Chen, Sophia explained quietly. She's one of our volunteer teachers. We have guitar and voice instructors too, but we've been without a dedicated piano teacher for months. Elena noticed an upright piano against the wall. It wasn't fancy. Certainly nothing like the grand at Bellini's, but it looked well maintained. The piano was donated last year, Sophia said, following her gaze. We have a few keyboards too for practice. Would you like to try it? No, I'm just observing today, Elena said quickly. They watched the violin lesson for a while. Ms. Chen was patient and encouraging, her students attentive despite the occasional fidgeting. When the lesson ended, the kids broke into smaller groups for practice time. A few gravitated toward the piano, taking turns picking out simple melodies. A small girl, no more than 8, struggled with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, her tiny fingers pressing the wrong keys in frustration. Without thinking, Elena walked over and knelt beside her. May I? She asked gently. The girl nodded, eyes wide. I'm Elena. What's your name? Lily, the girl whispered. Nice to meet you, Lily. Let's try together. Start with your thumb on this key, that's middle C. Elena guided Lily's fingers, showing her the pattern. After a few attempts, Lily managed to play the first line correctly and beamed with pride. I did it, she exclaimed. You did, Elena agreed, surprised by the warmth that spread through her chest at the girl's accomplishment. It was such a small thing, a simple children's tune. But Lily's joy was genuine. Other children gathered around, eager for help with their own attempts at the piano. Elena found herself moving from one to another. offering tips and encouragement. Before she knew it, an hour had passed. "You're a natural teacher," Sophia said as the children were collected by parents or headed to other activities. Elena shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "They're eager to learn. That makes it easy." "We have piano lessons on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, 4 to 6, Sophia said casually. "The pay is modest, $20 per hour, but we're flexible with scheduling." $20 an hour was less than Elena made waiting tables, especially counting tips. But as she watched Lily proudly demonstrate her new skill to her mother, something shifted inside her. Teaching these kids wouldn't restore the future she'd lost, but maybe it could give meaning to the present. "I work lunch shifts on Thursdays," she said finally. "But I could do Tuesdays." Sophia's face lit up. "That would be wonderful. You can start next week if that works for you." Elena nodded, still not entirely sure why she was agreeing. "Just Tuesdays for now. We'll see how it goes." As she left the community center, Elena felt lighter somehow, as if she'd set down a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying. On the bus ride home, she found herself mentally organizing lesson plans, thinking about how to explain basic concepts to beginners. That night, she took out her composition notebook again and turned to the unfinished After Rain. Almost without conscious thought, she began to write, adding a new phrase that had come to her while watching Lily play. It wasn't much, just a few measures, but it was more than she'd composed in 7 years. When she arrived for her shift at Bellini's on Monday, Mr. Bellini immediately cornered her. "We're all set for Friday night. I've had flyers printed. Elena Novak, piano virtuoso. Has a nice ring, doesn't it?" Elena took a deep breath. "Mr. Bellini, I can't do it. I'm sorry," his face fell. "But we discussed this. The 300 per night, I know, and I appreciate the offer. But I've taken another position." The words surprised her even as she said them. "I'll be teaching piano on Tuesdays." "Teaching? Where?" "The West Side Community Music Program." Mr. Bellini looked genuinely confused. "But they can't possibly pay what I'm offering." "No, they don't," Elena agreed. "But it's something I need to do." She expected him to be angry, perhaps even threaten her job. Instead, he studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand. But my offer stands if you change your mind. The customers loved you." As Elena tied on her apron and prepared for her shift, she realized something had changed. For the first time in years, she was making a choice based not on mere survival, but on what might actually make her happy. It was a small step, but perhaps the beginning of finding her way back to herself. Not the person she had been before, but someone new. Someone who might make peace with both her past and her future. And now she had to forget all over again. 2 months into teaching at the Westside Community Music Program, Elena found herself looking forward to Tuesdays more than any other day of the week. What had started as a single afternoon of lessons had expanded to include an early evening adult beginner class. She still worked at Bellini's. Bills had to be paid. But something fundamental had shifted in how she viewed her life. Today she was working with Lily on a simple Bach minuet. The 8-year-old's progress had been remarkable, her small hands growing more confident each week. "Remember to count," Elena reminded her gently as Lily stumbled over a tricky passage. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Lily nodded, her face a mask of concentration as she started again. This time she made it through the difficult section without a mistake. "Perfect," Elena exclaimed. "You've been practicing." Lily beamed with pride. "Every day. My mom got me a keyboard for my birthday. It's not as nice as this piano, but I can practice whenever I want now." After Lily's lesson came 14-year-old Devon, whose natural talent was beginning to blossom under Elena's guidance. Then the adult class, where a group of 6, ranging from college students to retirees, learned together, their shared struggles and triumphs creating an unexpected sense of community. By the time Elena locked up the music room at 7:30, she was tired, but fulfilled in a way that serving tables never achieved. As she gathered her belongings, Sophia stepped into the room. "You've transformed our piano program," Sophia said, leaning against the doorframe. "We've got a waiting list now. Word is spreading." Elena shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "The students do the work. I just guide them. That's what the best teachers do." Sophia handed her an envelope. "This week's pay. Plus a little extra. We got an anonymous donation specifically for the piano program." As they walked out together, Sophia mentioned casually. The city's annual composition competition was announced today. This year's theme is renewal. Elena kept her expression neutral. Interesting. The preliminary judging is blind, no names, just the music itself. The finalist pieces are performed by the Chicago Symphony at the showcase concert. Sounds prestigious? It is. The grand prize is $20,000 and a commission for a full orchestral piece. Sophia paused. You should enter. Elena laughed, the sound hollow even to her own ears. I'm not a composer. The piece you played at the Henderson party suggests otherwise. That was written years ago when I was a different person. Sophia watched her carefully. People change, but talent doesn't disappear. I've seen you working on music after your lessons. New compositions, right? Elena felt her cheeks warm. She had indeed been composing again. Small pieces initially, exercises really, but growing increasingly complex as the weeks passed. Just tinkering. Nothing serious. The deadline is 6 weeks away, Sophia said. Just think about it. On the bus ride home, Elena did think about it. The idea was both terrifying and oddly tempting. She hadn't seriously composed in years, but lately, music had been flowing through her again, demanding to be written down. After Rain had grown from a fragment into a substantial piece, though still unfinished. At home, she pulled out her composition notebook, now supplemented with several new pages. The theme renewal echoed in her mind. Wasn't that what she was experiencing? A slow, hesitant return to the person she used to be? Or perhaps the discovery of someone new? Her phone buzzed with a text from Danny. You free tomorrow? Need to swap shifts. The everyday reality of life intruded. Composition competitions were for people who didn't have to worry about making rent or covering utilities. People who hadn't walked away from that world years ago. She texted back her agreement to swap shifts and put the notebook away. The next morning's newspaper sat folded on a table Elena was clearing at Bellini's. The headline caught her eye. Chicago Symphony announces composition competition. Reynolds to head judging panel. A photo of Victor Reynolds accompanied the article, his stern expression just as she remembered from the Henderson party, the critic who had dismissed her as a waste. Some light reading with breakfast? Mr. Bellini appeared beside her, nodding at the paper. Just noticed the headline, Elena said, continuing to clear the table. Ah, the famous competition. Very prestigious. You know, you could... I'm happy teaching, Elena interrupted, and waiting tables. Mr. Bellini raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Throughout her shift, Elena found herself thinking about the competition. The idea that Victor Reynolds would be judging should have ended any temptation to enter. The man had already made his opinion of her clear, and yet there was something appealing about the anonymity of the preliminary judging. Her music would be evaluated on its merits alone, without Reynolds knowing it was hers. After work, instead of going straight home, Elena found herself walking to the community center. It was Wednesday, no classes scheduled, but she had a key now. The building was quiet, most programs finished for the day. She made her way to the music room and sat at the piano. For 2 hours, she played and scribbled notes, working through ideas for a new piece. The theme of renewal spoke to her, but she wanted to avoid anything too obvious or sentimental. Renewal wasn't just about happiness or triumph. It included struggle, resistance, the pain of growth. Lost in composition, she didn't hear the door open. I thought I might find you here, Sophia said. Elena jumped, then relaxed. Just working through some ideas. For the competition? Maybe, I haven't decided yet. Sophia sat in one of the student chairs. You know Reynolds is the head judge. I saw. Does that matter? Elena's fingers traced a pattern of notes absently. He heard me play at the Henderson party. He wasn't impressed. He heard a waitress play an old composition under pressure after years of not touching a piano. Sophia corrected. The competition is different. Blind judging means he won't know it's you until the finalists are selected. And if I make it to the finals, he'll see me and regret his choice immediately. Or he'll hear your music performed by world-class musicians and recognize its value. Sophia leaned forward. Either way, you'll know. Isn't that worth something? The question lingered with Elena in the weeks that followed. Between shifts at Bellini's and lessons at the community center, she worked on her competition piece, tentatively titled After the Storm. It incorporated elements from After Rain, but had evolved into something more complex, more honest about both pain and possibility. 3 days before the submission deadline, catastrophe struck. A pipe burst in the apartment above Elena's, sending water cascading through her ceiling. Most of her belongings were salvageable, but her composition notebook was soaked, the ink running in blue rivers across the pages, making weeks of work nearly illegible. Elena sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by soggy possessions, holding the ruined notebook. All those hours of work, the careful notation, the revisions and refinements, gone. It felt like a sign. She wasn't meant to enter the competition, wasn't meant to step back into that world. When she arrived at the community center for her Tuesday lessons, she was exhausted from dealing with insurance claims and temporary housing arrangements. The last thing she felt capable of was teaching, but she couldn't let her students down. Lily noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Are you okay, Ms. Elena? You look sad." Elena forced a smile. "I'm fine. My apartment had some water damage, that's all." "Did you lose stuff?" Lily asked with a child's directness. "Some things. Including my music notebook, the one with all my compositions." Lily's eyes widened. "The one with our song in it?" Elena had been composing a simple piece inspired by her students, with parts they could all play together. "Yes, that one too. Can't you write it again? You made it so it's in your head, right? Out of the mouths of babes." Elena smiled, a genuine one this time. "You're right, it is in my head, and maybe I can make it even better this time." Throughout the day's lessons, Elena found her mood lifting. Each student, from Lily to the adult beginners, brought something unique to their music, some quality that couldn't be destroyed by burst pipes or soggy notebooks. After the last student left, Elena sat at the piano and began to play from memory. The competition piece wasn't lost, not really. She knew where it was going, what it needed to say. Starting with just the main theme, she began to reconstruct it, making changes as she went, some parts becoming simpler, others more intricate. Sophia found her there hours later, surrounded by new pages of notation. "You're still here," Sophia said, surprised. "I heard about your apartment, I'm so sorry." Elena looked up, bleary-eyed but smiling. "I'm rewriting my composition. For the competition. The deadline's in 2 days." "Are you sure?" "With everything else going on, I'm sure." Elena gathered the pages, tapping them into a neat stack. "It's not exactly the same as the original. I think it's better, actually. More honest." Sophia studied her face. What changed? Elena thought about it. "I was trying to compose something impressive before, something that would prove I still had value as a musician. Now I'm just trying to tell the truth about where I've been and where I might be going." The day of the submission deadline, Elena carefully packaged her composition titled simply, "After." No name appeared anywhere in the score, just an identifying number assigned by the competition organizers. As required, she included a sealed envelope with her contact information inside, marked only with the same number. Standing at the mailbox, envelope in hand, she hesitated. Submitting meant opening herself to judgment again, to potential humiliation. If she made it to the finals, she would have to face Victor Reynolds, the man who had dismissed her so completely. A memory surfaced. Lily at the piano, face scrunched in concentration, refusing to give up on a difficult passage. "I can do hard things," the 8-year-old had declared when Elena suggested they might move on to something simpler. Elena dropped the envelope into the mailbox. "So can I," she whispered. 2 weeks later, Elena was teaching Devon when Sophia burst into the room, waving a letter. "It came," she exclaimed, then composed herself, remembering there was a lesson in progress. "Sorry. Devon, do you mind if I interrupt for just a minute?" Devon shook his head, curious. Sophia handed the letter to Elena. The competition results, preliminary round. Elena's heart raced as she opened the envelope. She scanned the letter quickly, then read it again more slowly. "Well?" Sophia prompted. Elena looked up, her expression stunned. "I'm a finalist. They've selected my piece for performance." "I knew it." Sophia hugged her impulsively. "When is the showcase concert?" "Next month, May 15th. Elena's voice was faint. The Chicago Symphony will perform my composition, and Victor Reynolds will discover it's mine." "Good," Sophia said firmly. It's time he learned how wrong he was. As Sophia left and Elena turned back to Devon's lesson, a mix of emotions swirled within her. Pride, anxiety, vindication, and beneath it all, a growing sense of possibility. Whatever happened at the showcase concert, she had already crossed a threshold she once thought permanently closed. She was composing again. She was teaching. She was, in her own way, a musician once more. The weeks leading up to the showcase concert passed in a blur for Elena. Between teaching, her shifts at Bellini's, and dealing with repairs to her apartment, she barely had time to process what was happening. Her composition, her music, would be performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. It still didn't seem real. "You're coming to the concert, right?" Elena asked Danny as they prepared for the lunch rush at Bellini's. She hadn't told many people about being a finalist, but her co-worker had become something of a friend over the years. "Wouldn't miss it," Danny promised, tying her apron. "Though I still can't believe you kept your musical genius secret all this time," Elena laughed. "Hardly a genius, and it wasn't exactly a secret, just part of my past I didn't talk about." "Well, I've already told my boyfriend we have plans that night, so you better put me on the guest list." The competition had provided each finalist with 10 complimentary tickets. Elena had given 2 to Sophia, who had been her biggest supporter, and 1 each to Danny and Mr. Bellini. The rest she distributed among her students and their families. Lily had been so excited that she'd made a special card congratulating Elena on being a famous composer. A week before the concert, Elena received an email from the competition organizers requesting that all finalists attend a pre-concert reception. "This will be your opportunity to meet the orchestra conductor and the judging panel," the email explained. "Professional attire is expected. Professional attire." Elena stared at her closet with dismay. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of practical, comfortable clothes suitable for waiting tables or teaching piano lessons. Nothing that would qualify as appropriate for a formal reception with Chicago's musical elite. "You need a dress," Sophia declared when Elena mentioned the dilemma during their weekly coffee meeting. "Something that makes you feel confident." "I can't afford to spend money on a fancy dress I'll wear once," Elena protested. "Consider it an investment in your new career," Sophia countered. "Besides, I know a great consignment shop where we can find something perfect without breaking the bank." The consignment shop turned out to be a treasure trove. After trying on several options, Elena found a simple but elegant dark blue dress that fit her perfectly. "It matches your eyes," Sophia said approvingly. "And it's classic enough that you could wear it for future performances or teaching recitals." Future performances. The word stirred something in Elena, a cautious hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The night of the reception arrived. Elena stood outside the Chicago Symphony Center gathering her courage. Through the glass doors she could see people in formal attire mingling in the lobby, champagne glasses in hand. Somewhere in that crowd was Victor Reynolds, the critic who had dismissed her so thoroughly at the Henderson party. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, smoothing down her dress. Inside, a woman with a clipboard directed her to a group of people wearing name badges identifying them as finalists. There were 5 of them in total, including Elena. They were an eclectic group, 2 middle-aged men who turned out to be university professors, a young woman who had recently graduated from a conservatory, and an older gentleman who composed mainly for film and television. "I'm terrified," the young woman Kira confided to Elena after they'd introduced themselves. "My composition professor is one of the judges, and he's brutally honest." "I know the feeling," Elena replied, scanning the room for Victor Reynolds. She spotted him near the bar, deep in conversation with a tall man she recognized as the orchestra's conductor. Reynolds looked exactly as she remembered: silver hair, penetrating eyes behind stylish glasses, an air of authority that made people around him stand a little straighter. The competition director, a brisk woman named Dr. Chen, gathered the finalists. "We'll be introducing you to the judges and conductor now," she explained. "Then you'll have time to mingle before tomorrow's rehearsal." Elena's heart pounded as they approached the group of judges. One by one, the finalists were introduced. When her turn came, Dr. Chen said simply, "And this is Elena Novak, composer of After." The conductor shook her hand warmly. "A beautiful piece," he said. "Deceptively simple on the surface, but with remarkable depth. I'm looking forward to performing it." "Thank you," Elena managed, moved by his genuine appreciation of her work. And then she was face to face with Victor Reynolds. His eyes widened slightly in recognition, but he gave no other sign that they had met before. "Ms. Novak," he said, taking her hand briefly, "your composition shows promise." Was that surprise in his voice? Elena couldn't tell. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I'm honored to be a finalist." He studied her face. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? Someone with more formal training, perhaps." "Your piece demonstrates unusual emotional maturity." Before Elena could respond, they were interrupted by another judge wanting to meet her, and the moment passed. Throughout the evening, she felt Reynolds watching her from across the room, but he made no further effort to speak with her. As the reception wound down, the finalists were given their schedules for the following day. The orchestra would rehearse each piece with the composer present, leading up to the evening concert where the winners would be announced. "Get some rest," Dr. Chen advised them. "Tomorrow will be intense." Elena barely slept that night. Her mind kept replaying snippets of conversation from the reception, imagining how her music would sound performed by professional musicians, worrying about facing Reynolds again. She arrived at Symphony Center early the next morning, clutching a travel mug of coffee like a lifeline. The other finalists were already there, looking equally nervous and sleep-deprived. "They're rehearsing in performance order," Kira told her. "You're third." Elena sat in the nearly empty concert hall listening as the orchestra worked through the first two compositions. Both were impressive, complex, technically challenging pieces that showcased the composer's skill and education. Next to them, her own work seemed almost naive in its emotional directness. When her turn came, Elena took a seat next to the conductor at the front of the hall. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her score. "Any particular sections you want us to focus on?" the conductor asked. "I trust your judgment," Elena replied. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity to hear it performed by such talented musicians." The conductor nodded and turned to the orchestra. "From the beginning, please." The first notes filled the hall, a simple, haunting melody played by a solo cello, just as Elena had imagined it. Then other instruments joined gradually, building layers of harmony and counterpoint. Hearing her composition brought to life by the full orchestra was unlike anything Elena had experienced. The music was both exactly what she had written and somehow more, each musician adding subtle interpretations, breaths and emphases, that gave the piece dimensions she hadn't fully anticipated. Tears pricked at her eyes as the music reached the turning point. The moment when the storm tossed, themes found resolution not in triumph but in quiet acceptance, in the gentle aftermath of survival. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of silence before the conductor turned to her. "Beautiful," he said simply. "Let's take it once more from measure 72 where the woodwinds enter. I think we can bring out that counter melody a bit more." The rehearsal continued for another 30 minutes, the conductor and musicians treating her work with the same seriousness and respect they had shown the more established composers. Elena made a few small suggestions about tempo and dynamics, surprised by her own confidence in discussing her music. As she gathered her score at the end of the session, she noticed Victor Reynolds sitting alone in the back row of the hall. He had been listening to the rehearsal, though she hadn't seen him come in. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, making a note in the small book he always carried. The hours before the concert passed in a nervous haze. Elena changed into her blue dress in a small dressing room provided for the finalists, applied minimal makeup, and tried to calm her racing thoughts. This night, whatever happened, was more than she could have imagined possible just a few months ago when she was reluctantly playing piano at the Henderson party. At 7 o'clock, the concert hall began to fill. From backstage, Elena could hear the growing murmur of the audience. She peeked through the curtain and spotted Sophia in the third row, surrounded by students from the West Side program, including Lily in a frilly dress, practically bouncing with excitement. Mr. Bellini sat a few rows back, looking uncharacteristically dignified in a suit. Danny waved from her seat near the back, The finalists were seated together in a special section just off stage. One by one, their compositions were performed, each met with enthusiastic applause. Elena's piece was third in the program. As the orchestra prepared, she closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. The first notes of "After" filled the concert hall. Elena watched the audience rather than the orchestra, curious to see how people responded to her music. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. Others leaned forward slightly, engaged and attentive. Her gaze found Victor Reynolds, seated with the other judges in a reserved section. His expression was unreadable at first, but as the music progressed, she saw something shift. His usual mask of critical detachment softened. At one particularly poignant transition, he actually closed his eyes briefly, as if allowing himself to simply experience the music rather than analyze it. When the piece ended, the applause was immediate and warm. Elena stood when the conductor gestured to her, acknowledging the audience with a small bow. As she sat back down, she caught Reynolds watching her, a look of genuine puzzlement on his face. After all 5 compositions had been performed, the judges left to make their final decision. The audience mingled in the lobby during the intermission, while the finalists remained backstage, too nervous to face their friends and supporters yet. "Your piece was beautiful," Kira told Elena. "So honest. Mine feels overworked in comparison." "Don't say that," Elena replied. "Your music is brilliant, all those intricate harmonies and rhythms. I could never compose something so sophisticated." "Technical skill isn't everything," the older composer interjected. "Your piece had heart. Sometimes that's more important." Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. "They're ready. Please take your seats on stage." 5 chairs had been arranged in a semicircle. The finalists sat under the bright lights facing the returning audience. The head of the competition organizing committee approached the microphone. "Thank you all for joining us for this celebration of new musical voices," she began. "Each of our finalists has created a remarkable work, and we are honored to have shared them with you tonight." She continued with thank yous to sponsors and organizers before finally saying, "And now, to announce the results of this year's competition, our head judge, Mr. Victor Reynolds." Reynolds approached the microphone with his characteristic confidence. "Music at its best does more than demonstrate technical prowess or theoretical understanding. It communicates truth. It makes us feel something genuine." He paused, looking directly at the 5 finalists. All of tonight's compositions showed extraordinary skill, but one piece spoke with particular clarity and emotional honesty. Elena held her breath, certain he was about to name one of the other finalists. The winner of this year's Chicago composition competition is "After" by Elena Novak. For a moment, Elena couldn't move. She heard the applause as if from a great distance. Kira nudged her gently, and she rose on unsteady legs to accept the award, a crystal trophy and an envelope containing the prize money. As she shook Reynolds's hand, he leaned close. "It seems I misjudged you, Ms. Novak," he said quietly. "Your music speaks for itself." Standing at the microphone, trophy in hand, Elena looked out at the audience, at Sophia and her students, at Mr. Bellini and Danny, at all the people who had become part of her journey back to music. "Thank you," she said simply. "This piece is about finding your way forward after loss, about how sometimes the things that break us can also reshape us into something new." She paused, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I stopped playing and composing for 7 years, but music found me again, through teaching, through my students who reminded me why it matters. This is for them, and for anyone who thinks it's too late to rediscover what they love." As she stepped back from the microphone, the applause washed over her like a wave. Whatever came next, the commission, the new opportunities this prize would bring, Elena knew she had already received the greatest gift. The music itself returned to her life when she thought it was gone forever. The morning after the competition, Elena woke to her phone buzzing with notifications. Congratulatory messages from friends and co-workers, emails from people she hadn't spoken to in years who had somehow heard the news, and most surprisingly, interview requests from local music publications. She silenced her phone and made coffee, trying to process everything that had happened. The crystal trophy sat on her kitchen table, catching the morning light. Beside it was the envelope containing the prize money, $20,000 more money than she'd ever had at once. A text from Sophia broke through her daze. "Have you seen the Tribune yet?" Elena hadn't. She threw on clothes and hurried to the corner store, buying the newspaper with trembling hands. There it was, on the front page of the arts section. Waitress turned composer wins prestigious competition. Below the headline was a photo of her accepting the award. Looking stunned and overwhelmed, the article itself was even more surprising. It was written by Victor Reynolds, a break from tradition, as the head judge didn't usually review the competition. In a remarkable turn of events, Reynolds wrote, "This year's Chicago composition competition was won not by a conservatory graduate or established composer, but by Elena Novak, a waitress and community music teacher whose only formal training was a partial scholarship at Juilliard, cut short by personal tragedy." Reynolds went on to describe her composition in glowing terms. What after lacks in academic complexity, it more than compensates for in emotional honesty and melodic ingenuity. Novak's composition speaks directly to the listener without pretension or artifice, reminiscent of the best work of contemporary minimalists, while maintaining a distinct voice. Most surprising was the final paragraph. This critic must acknowledge a personal bias overcome. Having previously encountered Ms. Novak in her capacity as a waitress, I dismissed her as another talented musician who had failed to fulfill her potential. Her triumph last night serves as a humbling reminder that great art can emerge from unexpected sources, and that genuine musical gifts cannot be suppressed by circumstance. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra is fortunate to have commissioned her next work. Elena read the review 3 times, hardly believing the words. Victor Reynolds, the most feared critic in Chicago, had not only praised her work but publicly admitted his mistake in judging her. It was more vindicating than the prize itself. Back at her apartment, she found an email from the symphony's artistic director, outlining the commission, a 20-minute orchestral piece to be premiered in their next season. The fee was substantial, enough that she could potentially reduce her hours at Bellini's to focus on composing and teaching. As she tried to wrap her mind around these new possibilities, her phone rang. It was Mr. Bellini. "Elena, my star employee. Front page of the Tribune." She laughed. "Just the arts section, Mr. Bellini. Details. Listen, we must celebrate. Dinner at the restaurant tonight, on the house. Bring friends." "That's very generous, but no buts. I've already told the staff. Everyone is so proud. Our very own award-winning composer." The way he said it, "our very own," touched Elena unexpectedly. For all his flaws, Mr. Bellini had given her a job when she desperately needed one, and had recognized her talent when he heard her play. "Thank you," she said sincerely. Dinner would be lovely. Her next call was to Sophia, who had already read Reynolds' review and was practically bursting with excitement. "It's extraordinary, Elena. Do you realize what this means? Every door that closed for you 7 years ago is opening again." "It's overwhelming," Elena admitted. "The commission, the attention. I've been invisible for so long, and now suddenly everyone sees me." "They see what I saw months ago," Sophia said gently, a gifted musician who needed to find her way back to her art. That evening at Bellini's was surreal. Instead of serving tables, Elena sat at the best one in the house with Sophia and Danny, while her co-workers took turns stopping by to congratulate her. Mr. Bellini had printed copies of the Tribune Review and was showing it to every customer who walked in. "You're a celebrity now," Danny teased as they enjoyed dessert. "Will you still remember us little people when you're famous?" Elena rolled her eyes. "I won a local competition, not a Grammy. Besides, nothing's really changed. I still need to pay rent." "Everything's changed," Sophia countered. "You've been recognized for your talent. You have a commission from one of the country's best orchestras. And most importantly, you've reclaimed a part of yourself you thought was lost." Later that night, as Elena walked home, she reflected on Sophia's words. It was true. Something fundamental had shifted. Music had returned to her life, not as a painful reminder of what she'd lost, but as a living, evolving part of who she was now. The weeks following the competition brought a whirlwind of changes. The prize money allowed Elena to reduce her shifts at Bellini's to just 2 days a week. She expanded her teaching at the West Side program to 3 days, and reserved the remaining time for composing the commissioned piece. Reynolds' review had brought attention to both Elena and the community music program. New students enrolled, and several local businesses made donations. A piano store offered them 2 new keyboards at a steep discount. A retired music teacher volunteered to help with the beginning classes. One Tuesday afternoon, as Elena finished teaching her last student of the day, she noticed a familiar figure waiting in the hallway. Victor Reynolds. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, surprised. "What brings you here?" He seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "I hoped we might speak privately, Ms. Novak." They sat in the now empty classroom. Reynolds glanced at the upright piano, the mismatched chairs, the hand-drawn posters of musical notation on the walls. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "A more substantial one than what I wrote in my review." Elena waited, curious about what had brought the notoriously proud critic to this humble community center. "When we met at the Henderson party, I made a judgment based on my own prejudices. I saw a waitress playing the piano and assumed I knew your story. I was dismissive and condescending." "You were," Elena agreed, not making it easier for him. He acknowledged this with a nod. "What I failed to recognize was the very quality I most value in music: authenticity. Your playing that night, particularly your own composition, had a rawness and emotional honesty that is rare. Instead of recognizing it, I dismissed it because it didn't fit my preconceptions." "Why are you telling me this now?" Elena asked. "You already acknowledged your mistake in the review." Reynolds looked down at his hands, then back at her. "Because I'd like to make amends in a more concrete way. I've started a foundation to support musicians from non-traditional backgrounds. We offer mentorship and financial assistance to talented individuals who might otherwise be overlooked by the classical music establishment." He handed her a business card. "I'd like you to be on our advisory board. Your perspective would be invaluable." Elena took the card, genuinely surprised. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Reynolds stood to leave, then paused. "Your commission for the symphony, how is it progressing?" "Slowly," Elena admitted. "It's different writing for a full orchestra, more complex than anything I've done before. If you'd like feedback as you work, I'd be happy to listen." Seeing her skeptical expression, he added, "Not as a critic, just as a fellow lover of music." After he left, Elena sat at the piano thinking about his offer. The idea of Victor Reynolds as a mentor would have seemed laughable just months ago. Yet people could surprise you, could change and grow just as she had. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Elena stood backstage at Symphony Center once again. This time she wasn't a competitor but a commissioned composer. Her new piece, Bridges, was about to receive its world premiere. So much had changed since the competition. The community music program had expanded, partly due to Elena's growing reputation and partly due to a grant from Reynolds's new foundation. She now taught there full-time, having finally left Bellini's, though she still visited often, and Mr. Bellini never failed to tell customers about his famous composer. Her students had come en masse tonight, filling 2 rows of the concert hall. Lily, now 9, had insisted on bringing flowers for Ms. Elena's big night. Sophia sat with them, as proud as if Elena were her own daughter. 5 minutes? Ms. Novak, a stagehand informed her. Elena smoothed her dress, a new one this time, bought with her own money rather than from a consignment shop. She had worked on Bridges for months, pouring into it everything she had learned about loss and resilience, about finding new paths when old ones disappeared. Victor Reynolds had indeed provided feedback throughout the process, his critical eye helping her refine and strengthen the piece without changing its essential character. The conductor appeared beside her. "Ready?" She nodded, following him to the stage. The audience applauded as she was introduced and took a small bow before sitting in the front row. As the orchestra began to play, Elena closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. It was both strange and wonderful to hear her innermost thoughts and feelings transformed into sound, interpreted by dozens of skilled musicians. The piece moved from hesitant beginnings through turbulent middle passages to a resolution that wasn't triumphant, so much as peacefully accepting. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of silence before the applause began, tentative at first, then building to a standing ovation. Elena stood to acknowledge it, smiling through tears as she saw her students on their feet, cheering for their teacher. The reception afterward was a blur of congratulations and introductions. Representatives from other orchestras expressed interest in her work. A publishing company wanted to discuss releasing her compositions. A university inquired about guest lectures. Near the end of the evening, Elena found herself standing with Sophia and Reynolds, watching as the crowd gradually thinned. "What will you do next?" Reynolds asked. "With all these opportunities opening up." Elena thought about it. "Keep teaching, definitely. The kids at West Side, they're as important to me as composing. Maybe more so. And the university offer?" Sophia asked. "Guest lectures could lead to something more permanent. Maybe eventually," Elena said. "But right now I'm exactly where I need to be." Later that night, back in her apartment, a new one, modestly nicer than her old place and featuring a digital piano she could play with headphones when inspiration struck at odd hours. Elena sat with a cup of tea, reflecting on the journey of the past year. From reluctant pianist to competition winner to commissioned composer, it was a path she never could have predicted. Yet it wasn't the external successes that had healed her, but the internal ones. Reconnecting with music on her own terms, finding joy in teaching, creating new work that expressed her authentic voice. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily's mother. "Lily can't stop talking about your music. Says she's going to compose her own piece for next month's student recital." Elena smiled, typing back, "Tell her I can't wait to hear it."